Okay, so following up with Joshua in chapter 24, verses 14 and 15 from the Christian Standard Bible, it says, "Now fear the Lord and serve him with all your faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshiped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if it doesn't please you to worship the Lord, choose for yourselves today, which will you worship? The gods your ancestors worshiped beyond the Euphrates River, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living? As for me and my family, we will worship the Lord." And so Joshua is talking to the Israelites. He's about to pass away. And what has happened is that they have done battle with the different tribes that were in the land and have begun to establish themselves, but they weren't fully obedient to the command of God, which was to drive out all of the tribes that were there. Because if they didn't drive out all of the tribes, then those tribes would cause the Israelites to worship their gods and not Yahweh. So Joshua is about to pass away, and he's just telling them, hey, you need to make a decision. You need to decide if you're going to serve the God that led you out of Egypt and established you in the land, or are you going to worship the gods of your ancestors, or are you going to worship the gods of these tribes that you should have fully driven out of the land? And so I saw a post on Facebook the other day where the person posted a picture of a group of members of a fraternity that were attending church service that day. And, they were just saying how blessed they were to have those organization members in church. But it's problematic because they're there and they're, holding up the hand signs and all these things in the house of God. And this particular organization is affiliated with the Sphinx. And I did find an article on its Smithsonian Magazine, and it talks about how Pharaoh Thutmose IV helped to introduce a Sphinx worshiping cult to the New Kingdom from the time period of 1550 to 1070 BC. And so the question becomes, what affiliation does a Christian or a Christ-following believer have with a Sphinx or any deity really that is or has been being worshipped, if we're supposed to be only worshiping Yeshua or Yahweh? And so furthermore, why is this being allowed in God's house? How did it get there? I think it's safe to say that it's a controversial topic because there's a lot of church leaders that are also in these organizations. So of course they're okay with allowing them to come in and showcase their organizations and whatnot. But really, how okay is it? There's a lot of these organizations, like, they're openly affiliated with these deities. Like, they'll have them on their like promo material, or they'll have them on their like official insignia, like their shields and all of that. And people say, oh, it's not that serious, it's just it's just a mascot, or it's like a picture or something like that. But God says you won't have any idols in my presence. And if God is in you, then you're always in his presence, but then you're also bringing this idol, this false god, into his presence as well. And I don't know, when did we become comfortable with idolatry? Like, we can see, if you follow the Israelites, you can see that that's what it's always been about. It's about God trying to get them to realize that he is the only God. He is their deliverer. He has been there before they were even a thing, but they're his chosen people, and we're his chosen people because we've accepted Christ in our lives. And so I don't know. It's very controversial. You'll have the members of these organizations that say, oh, I don't worship this deity, or I don't worship this organization. And, to them, they may not, but I don't know if they actually take into account that they took an oath to be loyal and in many cases be one with the organization or the members of the organization, and by default whatever the organization is linked up to, right? So I don't know. I think we need to examine how we view things or don't view things when it comes to idolatry in ourselves and in the church and what is allowed, because I think that it's coming a time, or it's, maybe the time is now that God is calling on us to address these things, to address them within ourselves, to address them within the church. Like when we see posts like that on Facebook, like, is this okay? At least have the discussion. There's a lot of people that will say, oh, well, it's no question, I don't worship anybody else but Jesus, and so that's that. But and there's some people that won't even have the conversation, right? Which is idolatry in itself, because if you're not idolizing the organization, then you are making yourself an idol, because you're saying that you can't be wrong. You're saying that you're not even willing to look into it for God to truly determine if something is an idol or not. So that being said, we just need to be very careful while we're being consecrated. Be very careful and be very mindful of the things that are in our lives. And it could be anything, right? You don't have to be a member of one of these organizations to have an idol. Like a lot of people, myself included, right? We'll wake up in the morning sometimes, and the first thing that we will reach for will be our telephones. And in most cases, I would say it might be more prudent to, as soon as you open your eyes, thank God for the ability that you can open your eyes. Like, you have another day of life, right? So anyway, all that to say, we need to be very mindful of who and what we're connected to, because it's very dangerous when we have idolatry in the church that is so rampant, but also being swept under the rug or being treated as a non-issue. So with that, go out, be bold for Jesus.